All right, y'all, we're live. We're live. I want to welcome everybody to. Dang, what meeting is this at? Is this like five or six? It's got to be like five or
I've
six.
lost count.
Yeah, right.
You don't keep up.
But this is our second discussion of the book, "Freedom is a Constant Struggle" by Angela Davis. And I kind of want to wait for people to get here because I want to give people a short little introduction of what we are as Unlocked because I still feel like a lot of people don't really know what we do. So maybe we'll give some people some time. We get a couple of viewers to log in here and get in here. But I just want to introduce people into the topic of Unlocked. So Unlocked is it's an online book club. Especially us being in a pandemic. This is kind of one of the most effective ways for us to communicate and share the messages that we have and discussions that we have surrounding the books. But
Mhm.
through Unlock, we want it to be not just a regular book club, but a book club with a purpose. So we're not just reading books for fun, but we're using books that will help expand our mindset and really help us to develop a revolutionary consciousness that will turn into revolutionary actions. So you might see in our bio of Unlocked, it says Black liberation through education. And that's kind of our goal through this. So our first book we read was Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates, which kind of set the stage for these conversations on race. And now we're reading a book by Angela Davis called Freedom the Constant Struggle, which kind of connects the different struggles between feminism, racism, apartheid struggles, the
Our
prison
connection with
industrial
Palestine.
complex. Yeah, I didn't hear you. My bad.
Our connection with Palestine.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Um, so if this is your first time here, this is kind of what we do. We come on here and we discuss our readings. So for the past 2 weeks, we read four chapters of Angela Davis's books, which is about 70 pages, and that's generally what you can expect out of us between meetings, which is really a workload of about 5 pages a day, which should take anybody maybe about 10, 15 minutes to complete. Um, So a very small workload, but in the long run, it can translate into a very effective outcome.
Right.
Um,
Trying to make it all palatable for people, and making sure you're not trying to knock out 100 pages in a day or anything like that.
word. And I'm Jalen, who some of y'all might know, and this is Zach. We're both UGA graduates, but we're doing this to, eventually try to change and shift the mindset of people, and eventually, break down these systems that oppress us as people.
Exactly. I mean, most as we see, we know a lot of people out here want action. I mean, you see that with protests, rebellions, um, on social media and everything. And the thing is, one constant axiom that seems to be true is that there is no true revolution without revolutionary theories or ideas, thoughts. So one way you manifest those thoughts is to actually read from the people that have had previous revolutionary writings and whatnot. So
Yeah, definitely. And organization. So this is a way that we can come together and not just read these books, but organize and express our thoughts around these books. And then from there, come up with ways that we can work together and put these thoughts into actions to actually create change. So, that's kind of what we want to do here at Unlocked. So we come on live stream every other week on Sundays at 7 p.m. And if anybody is reading along with us or just feels inclined to want to say something about a topic that we're talking about, there's always a link in our description, and that link will bring you into this live stream. So you'll be in here with me and Zach and whoever else we have on for the week, and you can provide a little more insight rather than if you were just typing in the comments. But we encourage people to do whatever they feel is comfortable. But we love engaging with y'all.
let's see, we have what, 5 people?
Yeah, we got about 5 people right
Okay.
now.
Okay.
Cool. But I think this might be a good time for us to start talking about the book.
There. All right, so in the first few chapters, it's just kind of like relating our struggles here in the states to the Palestinians' oppression, and how one way that we're connected is the G4S Securities Corporation, which is the number three corporation, number three biggest corporation in the world, right after I think she said Foxconn was number two,
Yeah,
and
Walmart.
Walmart, right, and
Yeah.
Walmart was number one.
Hmm.
And that's actually pretty big once you actually think about it. Like, it's actually kind of cool to think about. Like, damn, Walmart is that big, but also like not cool because that's also another oppressor, another system of another contributor to the system of our oppression. And just for those that may not have fully read those first few chapters, the way that we're connected to G4S is just the fact that, for instance, like here in Georgia, like we're located in Georgia, um, the our police department actually has our Atlanta Police Department actually has a program called GILI, which is the Georgia Israeli Law Enforcement Exchange Program. So both our police and Israel's military are being trained or being um, influenced or guided, helped by this company called G4S, which is disguised as a security company. And the thing is that really hits home is that our police here are militant and militarized for the same reason why Israel actually has their military combating um, their citizens and the Palestinians there that are fighting for their land back, basically. And for those that may not be very knowledgeable on that, because me personally, I wasn't until last year. It's like a long, uh, I won't say war, but bad. I guess it is a war in a sense. Um, Basically, Zionism versus indigenous people to that land, people that are actually supposed to live on that land. And for those who don't know what Zionism is, it's just in case. It's I'm probably about to butcher that. Let me make sure I get the right definition.
What Zionism is?
I don't want to say something and they'd be like I'm anti-Semitic. Like
Yeah,
I don't want to get this thing messed up.
that's the wrong perception to give off right now with all that Nick Cannon jazz going on.
Right. So Zionism, a definition from the Oxford Dictionary, says a movement for the reestablishment and now the development and protection of a Jewish nation in what is now Israel. It was established as a political organization in 1897 under Theodore Herzl and was later led by, I'm not even sure how to say this name, Chaim Weizmann. And the thing that makes this bad is that that land never was this group of Jewish people's land originally. They're just placing a religious claim on that land and a religious right on that land.
And
So
then they're using like the United States and
NATO,
companies like NATO and also companies like G4S to establish that Jewish presence in Palestine, but Palestine previously belonged to, um, the Palestinians, and it's kind of what the United States and colonizers have done all across the world by exiling these people from from the places they're indigenous from, and then claiming that they are that they're the ones in the wrong place or that they're the terrorists. Um, but Zionism before reading this book is something that I never really had a great understanding of.
right? Yeah, I would hear like old lectures and stuff like that about it, but it never really hit home. Like and this book actually does a great job at connecting that and seeing how we do have allies all across the seas that do also see these forms of oppression and how they're all connected, and how it's basically a new version of good versus evil. It's a modern day good versus evil.
So maybe we can explore some of the ways that Angela Davis pointed out that the United States and this Palestinian struggle are directly connected. So one way is that the United States gives $8.5 million a day in military aid
A day.
a day. This is not like
That's our
a
tax money.
year. Yeah. So this is money that we're paying in taxes that the United States is delegating to the Zionist regime and the Israeli occupation of Palestine. And for me, that hits home because like you have people that are living in your country that are calling for reparations that you've put through 400 years of slavery that y'all claim that there's no money for, which
Exactly.
but you're giving $8.5 million daily to the
Yeah.
Palestine, like to the Zionists and Israeli struggle in Palestine, which doesn't really have any. I mean, besides the religious basis, doesn't have any other concrete foundation.
Right. I would like to ask the ones that are our viewers. Also, just a reminder, you are welcome to join in and converse with us as well. It's encouraged to keep up with us in the books, but if you have anything to say and you haven't read, like you have anything you want to contribute, or want to join in the conversation, please do. We're welcome to that. If not, please, I would actually like to know what are some of y'all thoughts on the fact that your tax dollars are actually going all the way across the seas to a total different country just to oppress another people. I would actually like to see if anybody has any thoughts or feelings about that. And you just type them in the comments if you don't want to join.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight what Marcus said in the comments. He said global mindset is not a distraction, it's a strength. We, including myself, have an illusion that we are not connected and need to focus on the USA. And I think that's a lot of what Angela makes apparent in this. She
Exactly.
ties together Palestine, the South of African apartheid movement, feminism, um, uh, I want to
The,
say the LGBTQ community and their struggles, and how they directly all kind of intertwine, and also how G4S, the company, is kind of like playing a role and the United States plays a role in all of them. But I also wanted to point out another way is that G4S has their roles in schools. You remember reading about the Central Pasco Girls Academy? Um, you remember that part where they talked about how basically G4S has their place in securing this. I think it's a school for what do they call the schools where they send like bad children or
oh, it's not reformist schools. I know what you're talking about. Well, we got to keep. We'll continue on. Somebody hopefully comment on that. I forgot boarding schools. That's what
yeah,
you're talking about. Boarding schools, right?
I think so. That might not be the name I want. But she writes about how their influence has not only went from prisons to the police force, but it also has they also have their hands in schools and how you know
The school officers have guns.
school officers have guns and how even that they've equipped certain teachers with guns in schools where they don't have officers. They have taught teachers how to use guns and have equipped them with guns. So it's just an example of how like this security system is affecting us on all spectrums, and that's something that kind of stood out to me.
I would also add, like, there's actually a good chance of people actually having self-inflicted wounds from having their own guns when they pull them out and everything. Like if you're not trained the proper way, and I personally don't think that a company like G4S can actually train somebody to de-escalate situations or to actually train people on gun safety and everything. Um, I don't necessarily feel comfortable myself where teachers would, and being a teacher myself, I don't feel comfortable with teachers actually having guns like that out there.
I don't either. And what child is really that big of a threat to where you need a gun?
Exactly.
You know.
I
Um,
still remember a moment from high school when when our school officer actually pulled out his taser on one of my homeboys. And in that moment, I just still I can still vividly see it in my head, and I was like, bro, what is the point of this? You a good 100 pounds bigger than my friend. Like,
Hmm.
why do you even need this?
And I think we've seen that time and time again. You remember they have videos of like you remember that a couple of years, maybe like 10 years ago, it was like the girl that got beat by the resource officer
Yeah,
or something like that.
when she was
Like,
drugged in the classroom, like when she got thrown out of her desk and everything.
yep,
I remember that.
viral.
It's like, why do you need that? How do you actually make people feel safe in that environment?
Um, Personally, I couldn't tell you. I feel like that's the complete wrong environment for things like that.
I do
Um,
like that comment a lot though, because it truly is a strength whenever you start realizing how everything is connected and who actually is your allies, and it actually makes you feel more empowered knowing that you're not alone. Because it's kind of easy, in my opinion, when you're so USA focused, to think like, for instance, just being um, a black individual, it's very frustrating online when you see people post like Black Lives Matter and then somebody's commenting under it, all lives matter, about a good 5, 10 years after we've been saying as many different ways that we can explain it, that we're not saying these other folks' lives don't matter. We're saying y'all showing that our lives don't matter. That's all we've
and
been saying.
I think Angela actually talks about that in
Right.
maybe chapter 7 or chapter 8, which we probably talk about a little later, but we could bring it up now. But she said there are many instances that we would have to name before we can say all lives matter.
Exactly. Yeah,
So
that was
like,
the seventh chapter. Yeah.
yeah, so before we can say all lives matter, there are a number of things that we have to establish as, being secure before that statement actually becomes true. So when people say all lives matter, that's just a facade. It's just fake. Um,
Exactly.
all lives should matter, yes, but do they? No. And we have to advocate for the ones that don't matter. I think another way. Oh, let me just hit some of these comments. So Daisha says injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. She talks about the interconnection of struggles, and
I love
that's
that quote by MLK, but I don't think a lot of people have fully analyzed that to actually see how it does impact you anywhere you are in the entire world. Like I think one of her quotes that she said in the book was like, something that impacts an individual directly impacts the world indirectly.
yeah. And not even that. She talks about how politics is personal
Right.
and how like violence from a political level transfers down to a personal level. And that's a quote that didn't really make sense to me before reading this book. Not
So
not in the way it does to me
justice
now.
anywhere one.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, just not to like it made sense, but just not to the level it does now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's one great thing about this book, man. She really breaks it all down to modern day, at least from 5 years ago.
Most definitely. So Chris says, being a teacher, there's no way we can adequately be trained to have a gun. We barely have time to plan for our actual
Right.
class, right? My
Right.
family's full of teachers, man. I see that firsthand.
That's
Prob there isn't a way to properly secure a gun.
that's true. I don't think there is either. He said at this point they know what BLM means. Anything other than agreement is willful. Exactly, bro.
Hmm.
It's nothing but willful ignorance.
Willful ignorance. That's
Yeah.
exactly 100%.
After you think about it, it's like, how many times can you explain the same thing? How many times can you actually see videos of people being murdered and realize you haven't seen that same video for people that for other people that look different than the people that are being murdered? Like, you
Yeah.
haven't seen that the same. Like, I'll say the closest thing I've seen to that is what happened recently with that Rittenhouse boy, that 17-year-old that shot like three people up there in Kenosha, and that's probably the closest thing I've seen recently, or in these past 5, 10 years since Trayvon Martin, that really shows anything close to what should be called white on white crime.
Yeah. And did you see that video I retweeted on Twitter? Maybe like today. It might have been today or yesterday.
Which one is it?
It was this white. He was a white cop and a white guy in his truck, and
Mhm.
the white guy was like basically resisting the cop. Like the cop had his gun on him and everything. He was basically like, "Leave me the f alone. Like I don't really care. This is private property. I have my rights." And Shannon Sharp tweeted the video, and he was like, "Isn't this non-compliance?"
Right.
And he was like, "I need an explanation. Like, why isn't this guy shot and dead?"
Exactly.
And my thoughts on it was that the guy didn't shoot him because I
He
felt
sees
like
him
he
as
seen
human.
the white, huh?
He sees him as human.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Precisely. That's exactly what I said about it. It's like he sees him as a human being with rights, and they just don't see black people in that way. And
No.
I don't think it's a hard concept to wrap your mind about. So when people say all lives matter, like not Black lives matter, I think it's just negligence. Like it's people choosing not to like come to terms with reality.
I remember there was one some years ago. I don't recall if this was before or after Trayvon in 2012. However, I do know there was a video, and you could possibly, I don't know, there's been a lot of videos since then, but you could possibly still find it where this white guy is actually brandishing his weapon, his handgun, at the police and still didn't get shot. like the
Yeah.
man looks like he's mentally disabled. Like they always like to put that claim on people, but he legit looks like he's mentally unstable. And they don't shoot this man. They don't do anything to. And there's multiple videos like that, and it gets frustrating because it's like why do I not one, why do y'all always get upset about us getting upset about one of our people being murdered, and y'all don't get upset about your people being murdered? That really shows the lack of empathy you have for your own people in general. Like, why aren't you upset that an innocent white man got shot by another white man that had no gun or anything like that, or wasn't in trying to kill some police officer? Like, that's one thing that always gets me. Like, they ask, why do we get upset, and they be like, they're a criminal, and they're just throwing that label on them to dehumanize them. And I'm like, well, why don't y'all get upset when someone that looks like you gets murdered and killed? And it's it's like they think they're so, well, when I say they, I'll say the people that oppose our personal views on this, but they think that they're so exceptional that that couldn't happen to them.
Hmm.
And it's like a lot of these people are like Jacob Blake. You, as an officer, there's no way he knew that he actually had prior incidents with the law and actually just sat there and thought, okay, let me go be prepared to shoot this man. Nah, you actually just saw him and he didn't listen to what you said, and then you started shooting him 7 times in the back, but didn't know that he was actually the person that was doing a good thing beforehand and breaking up a fight. And then people want to say that he had a knife in it. He had a knife, but it was in his car. He wasn't trying to grab it. He wasn't like, you don't know that he was actually about to try to turn around. Like, why? Who in their right mind is about to go into a gunfight with a knife, dog? That doesn't add up. There's too many common sense type of things that when you put that in there to factor in, it's like that it makes no sense.
Yeah.
Um, I'm checking
And
the comments.
not only that, like I feel like I think that a white cop that kills a white person might be is not even might be. I don't know this to be fact, but they're probably more likely to get prosecuted than if they killed a black person. And that's where a large part of the problem is too. Like I bet if that white cop in that video I seen earlier shot that white guy for no apparent reason, he'd be in jail. But if it was a black guy, it's a question. The white cop probably walking free.
Right.
And Marcus says Ronnie King got his ass beat on film almost 30 years ago. They just want to confirm their own beliefs. How much confirmation do you need, man?
Exactly. Again, to those that are in here, I see we have like 12, 13 people. Again, if you want to join, so you don't have to be like use your Twitter fingers on here and be typing up the whole time. Like, I would love for y'all to actually join in on the conversation as well.
Um, but yeah, we could I think another way that G4S has their hands in things across the world is that they provide transportation for deportees who are that are in, illegal immigrants in United States. They send them back to Mexico,
Hmm.
and I also want to say they have their hands in the detention camps that they have them in.
Right.
So that's just another way in which the United States is kind of disenfranchising this, indigenous population, because they were the people that were really here before,
Right.
before anybody else. And the same way they're doing that to the indigenous people in Palestine, the same way, they did that to U.S. had a hand in doing that to the people in South Africa. You know, it really just shows you how all those things are connected and how it is continuing too, how it hasn't stopped. I think that's a perception that these things have stopped, like these things aren't happening in the world anymore, but they're
Hmm.
really ongoing.
Um, I know one quote that I have in here that I highlighted, which said the Emancipation Proclamation is perhaps the most misunderstood of the documents that have shaped American history. Contrary to legend, Lincoln did not free the nearly 4 million slaves with a stroke of his pen. It had no bearing on slaves in the four border states, since they were not in rebellion. The proclamation also exempted certain parts of the Confederacy occupied by the Union. So it's like one of those, another one of those things that were not necessarily told in history. Like, for I could possibly go find a test somewhere online right now and just says who freed the slaves. And it's gonna say Abraham Lincoln. Or what document freed the slaves? Emancipation Proclamation. Like,
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's still out there and probably still being taught in some class today. However, something like what she just now had in this book, she quoted that from another book. I don't remember what exact. I think it was called The Fire Trial or something like that. It's another book. I'd have to reread the book again to see what she said, which book she got it from. But it just shows that a lot of these documents or a lot of these court cases as well, when you don't actually dive into them and you just look at history in a sense of like on this day this happened and this was the person that did it, then you never actually really learn any lesson from it. Um, because most people, for instance, like myself, I forgot if I said this already, but as a child, hearing that, and I was sitting there thinking like, "Oh, dang, man, thank you, Mr. Lincoln, man."
Right. You think
Like,
Abraham Lincoln the goat,
yeah,
man?
boy, I'm gonna buy me a Lincoln Navigator because of yo, but like,
Yeah.
I literally sat there and thought, man, this is the best president. 16th president got me freaking everything. And then you grow up realizing this man wanted to ship us all to Haiti. Like,
Right.
he didn't even really care whether we were free or not. And apparently, in four states, people were still being screwed over. Like, he was very complacent with that. Like, he was fine with that. And that's another moment in history that we're quote unquote like brainwashed into thinking.
Yeah, and people really don't understand the effect that the American Colonization Society had, and how that, it seemed like they kind of operated under the facade that they wanted to give black people their land or in a place to be outside of America after after we were freed from the actual chains of slavery.
Right.
But in actuality, they just wanted to colonize us somewhere else. Like they were like, we're gonna take this problem and we're gonna ship them over there, and they're gonna be a colony of the United States, and we're not gonna have to deal with them in the same way that we deal with them here. And the Emancipation Proclamation, she goes on to say, didn't free the slaves. It just gave the slaves the ability to free themselves and fight for their own freedom.
Right.
So he signed and put out that document, which did nothing official, but it kind of let black people all around the South say, okay, I'm about to leave. I'm about to take up arms with the North, and we about to fight for our freedom in the Civil War. And I think that's just a misconception of education. That's another way in which education fails us.
Touching on Daisha's and Chris's comments, like the back half of Chris's and basically Daisha's right here when he said he freed them for the war, it just shows how our government will literally just use people for whatever profit they can get and then throw you to the side afterwards because they still do that with Hispanic and Latin immigrants that are coming here because a lot of people don't know that our government actually does bring in immigrants themselves. Like, and the corporations actually bring them, like they have ads sent to these other countries saying, "Yo, come work for us on these farms and everything." And then when ICE pulls up, they do not support them. Um, I'd have to remember which documentary it is. There's a documentary that used to be on Netflix that actually highlights that, where it really it showed the ads that these companies are actually throwing out there saying, "Hey, come here, work for us." Um, you're not even getting any insurance. You're out there all day. You're basically in an outdoor sweatshop working for a minimum wage, if that. And then after that, you get dehumanized. You get looked at as the bad guy, getting all of the so-called profit or benefits from just being here, and then have people claim that you're voting. Like, somehow you don't got a social security number, somehow got an ID, and somehow are in these elections having illegal voting processes.
And taking American jobs when really most illegal immigrants, and I even hate using that word,
You get
uh,
saying
but most of them are doing jobs that most Americans would never do,
yeah,
for wages they would never work for. And that
exactly.
reminds me of Donald Trump, who used, immigrant workforce to build up his company, and now he wants to build a wall. Like, I, I don't see the correlation.
There's a recent article that was out. I recently read that it actually showed that Trump has actually brought in more immigrants than Obama ever did, which is a total contradiction of his campaign that he ran on in 2016, 2015, 16. So it's like a blatant lie in our face that people are literally following, seeing it as truth, and it's so frustrating. Um, I see Chris's comment again. He says government isn't for the good of the people; it's set up for the good of the corporation that we call a country. Correct.
And he also said the slaves were never freed. The reason Dr. Davis is a huge proponent of the abolition of the prison system, Lincoln freeing the slaves was purely a war tactic and a financial move. And I think that's a question that she raises in, let me see what chapter this is. I want to say it's in the fifth chapter. I think that's largely what she talks about is like, are we really free?
Yeah, and I feel like that's one of those philosophical questions that I love to ask people. Like, are you free? Like,
Yeah.
do you? I feel like we recently had a conversation on conditioning and free will and whatnot, and it's like, do you have free will if you've been conditioned, and where all the media that you've been presented has steered or encouraged your thoughts a certain way?
Or your school curriculum, or your examples of role models, all these things and how they play together. Are you, like you were saying, are you really free?
Yeah,
And I would say that you aren't. And I think Angela would say the same thing. And one way that she talks about it is she talks about the civil rights movement and how there's a perception around the civil rights movement that after the civil rights movement was over, black people really had their freedom, which which is not really true. Where the civil rights were fighting for what it says, civil rights. And that's a question or something that I felt like we should talk about. It was the distinction between civil rights, black power, and the movement for like global freedom.
yeah,
Because even with the Black Lives Matter movement, we were talking about this earlier. Like, yeah, the Black Lives Matter movement is a great movement, and I support it. But at the end of the day, even if police officers stop killing black folks still not going to be free. So there's still work to do, and there's
right.
still work to do on other fronts. So I do, you know I support Lives Matter. I think it's a very imminent cause, but I think people also have to think about freedom in a larger sense.
Yeah, it's like every time we going back to, we say this a lot, but like when we progress with social issues, then the oppressor's powers also progresses as well. But it's like when we progress, it seems like people become complacent. It's like, yes, we finally got that, and then we're like, okay, let me coast a little bit, and then next thing you know, you realize there's something else. Um, where like you go from abolishing slavery to getting out of the Jim Crow system, and you see how these things are so spread apart, and time period, like different epochs of time or epics of time periods. And it just seems like every generation they accomplish something, and then that next one after them, either if that overt oppression isn't right there in your face, then it
Hmm.
seems like they get comfortable. They're
Yeah.
like, oh shoot, I mean, I can vote now. Like, I done this. Well, shoot, I'm good. Or I can go to school now at Harvard. Like, shoot, I mean, I'm good.
Like,
Or
and is that what's gonna happen with, Black Lives Matter, or are we gonna change the police system and be like, oh, that's all the issues, like, we're
yeah,
good,
and
you
that's
know?
scary because it's there's always something else, which is basically I guess the theme of the whole book. It's a constant struggle.
Hmm.
Um, what do you guys think in the chat, man? Let us know, man. What are y'all thoughts on each one of these movements? Like, what's the difference to y'all? What do y'all think? Because I see how we see in general how civil rights didn't solve everything, as we know and we see. We know the Black Power movement, it had its issues, but it also had some progression as well. When you talk about like SNCC or the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Organization, moving on to the Black Panthers, moving on to the Black Liberation Army, just consistently having new organizations pop up in the Black Power movement, to now we're talking about global freedom. Like, how now that we actually see that the enemy isn't just ignorance anymore. So we know that just educating people isn't going to be the answer to all of this, like people think. We have a lot of educated people. Like, we have a lot of brothers and sisters that's already been through college 10 times over.
And not even that, our oppressors are educated as well. Like, our oppressors know exactly what's going on. They know
Yeah,
that we are equal to them, but they want to hold on to their whiteness and their power.
is let me see. I personally, I know for a fact, even when if you beat white supremacy, or you beat the capitalist system, or you beat sexism, or you beat racism somehow, some way, there's gonna be some other form of oppression. It just works that way.
And I think a lot of those Black Power movements after the Civil Rights Movement were largely suppressed. And I think everybody can say that Black people do not have power in this country. And if we have any type of power, we're not using it.
Right. Well, you don't think we have any power?
Power, maybe.
Okay.
We were talking earlier about
Yeah.
our buying power and how our buying power is kind of facade because we don't own the mean and productions.
Right.
So I think we do have power, but I don't think we've organized enough for that power to be effective.
Right.
So we have like we what is it? Is it kinetic energy? So we have like power that's idle. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But we have to activate that power. That's what I think.
I personally think our power that we have left is literally our physical bodies, and in our daily lives. Like, I personally think, like I was talking about earlier, if you actually had a strike, national strike, where we all just like, look, I'm not working for none of these companies anymore. I'm just not doing it for a month. If every single person did that, like every single person is being oppressed, like, and that includes white people, even whether they know they're oppressed or not.
Yeah, if they align with our struggles, if all those people do that, I think that it would create change. I 100%
Yeah,
agree.
I think it would literally just take a month, because eventually people are going to learn how to start working together. Like, I don't necessarily need for my company to pay me a salary if I have a, a mom and pop shop down the road that's willing to contribute some of their goods to the families in the community. Or let's say, like, electricity. If everybody actually sat there and worked together, I'm pretty sure. For instance, I'll say this: there's just the fact that, like, small things can, like, you would not think that that people can break into the FBI headquarters and steal some files from them. And what I'm referring to is the ones that actually got the COINTELPRO files out of the FBI's files just to give to the media to actually let people know that, hey, there actually has been this secret or these secret counterintelligence programs, which is what COINTELPRO is short for those that may not know, that actually have been sitting here infiltrating each one of these black organizations, even not even just the black organizations, because you also had like the Young Lords, the Red Guard. You also had these other organizations that we don't really hear that much about, but that our government with our tax dollars were infiltrating just to make these people look bad. And actually, for instance, there actually was somebody that was a undercover informant that actually did murder somebody in the name of the Black Panthers, but in reality, that's what got some of the other Panthers off the hook, because that was an informant at the end of the day, and they actually did that killing, not the Panthers. So, but long story short, there was this little group that actually broke into the FBI headquarters and got these files out for the public to know about. Now, you think about something like that, and you would think somebody today would actually most likely not think about breaking into FBI headquarters or CIA or even a police department. So, but you see, like stuff like that is possible. Like just reading that let me know it's possible. Like I read out there was once a rebellion where people were throwing Mazel Tovs in a police station. I don't know how many people today that it would even think to do that if they never thought or known that that's been done in the past. It's already been done. And there's already been rebellions that's worked before. So I think whenever you do have groups that come together, as Daisha has said, our culture, like whenever you cultivate these cultures where you understand communally we're better together than we are as one, then you can actually make this stuff change. You can actually make this stuff work. It doesn't have to be so individualistic that I'm so worried about my livelihood that I have to go to work, that I can't think about these systems of oppression, that I can't actually go out there and protest because I got to work a 9 to 5 and the protest was at 12. Like these things are possible. They've been done. They just haven't, like Kwame Ture says, we're not outnumbered, we're out organized.
We're definitely not outnumbered. And this kind of became apparent to me today. We were having a conversation earlier. We were talking about I think we were saying about 30% of the population is black, right? And then
I think we put together we did 12-13 that was black, 12-13 that was Hispanic.
okay.
Yeah,
And
here
then
in the States.
okay. And then do you know the percentage of white people?
We can search it up real quick. That's what we
Yeah,
got
yeah, yeah.
for. I'm gonna put US.
Okay, so maybe I got it wrong. I thought that we were saying that we have 30% of the population is black, 30% of the population is immigrant or native indigenous populations.
Nah, nah, I know that for a fact ain't right. Based off of census.gov, it says with race and Hispanic origin, white race alone is actually 76.3%. This is based off of census now. And you gotta remember, a lot of us don't actually report on these censuses because we're like back in the day, it was kind of like Jehovah Witness, where somebody's pulling up with a suit on, you ain't about to open that door and sit there and tell them, yeah, I got 4 kids in this house, and give all your information out. And that still kind of gets passed down, where people still today, we're still trying to tell people like, this is how you get those resources. You actually have to fill out the census. Now, granted, I'm a little nervous myself because who's getting that information?
Yeah.
And like, how are you about to screw up the next voting polls based off of this information? But this is one way you have to act. You can use the government to get those resources. Supposedly, somebody may have to give more information on that, but based off of this, 76% white. We got 13.4% black, not Hispanic. 5.9% Asian, 18.5% Hispanic or Latino. So
And are those Hispanic? You might know, but might not know, but I'm thinking those are probably Hispanics that are citizens and not illegal Hispanics, right?
yeah, illegal. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
most likely, because I'm pretty sure if they would, if ICE finds out, I mean, I feel like right now anybody Hispanic that has any worries would definitely not fill out that census to the most accurate ability.
No. And I
Um,
think that's one of the reasons why they want to suppress illegal immigration, because they know if these indigenous people start, coming into United States, that's going to sway the vote,
yeah,
and they're not going to have the same type of power that they used to have. So
exactly.
that's 100% incentive for them to, like, try to push these populations out of the country.
Just for those watching, I think it was Daisha earlier that mentioned it. But there actually are still large populations of indigenous people that are in Central and South America. Therefore, this land here, they still actually own some rights to, or have a claim to, at least more so than a lot of people that don't even want them here. So it's kind of one of those things where you're still pushing people away from their own lands. Like, granted, a lot of people there historically, if you know history, and you know the conquistadors came in and started raping and pillaging and everything, and you do have intertwining races and ethnicities and cultures. However, they still have that bloodline in them from Mayas, Incas, uh, Aztecs, and so on. I may be wrong on the Aztecs. Wasn't that the one that was wiped out?
Not sure exactly. Not sure exactly.
Yeah, my bad on that. Let's see. Our mistrust for the system runs so deep as a people, we don't even want to tell them how many people live in our home. Facts. PTSD, years of abuse. Right.
Wes- Wesley says, I doubt a month of boycotting would have much of an effect. The bus boycott lasted a year before they listened and made a
Thank,
change.
thank you, Wesley, for mentioning that, because that's also something that's lost in history, man.
Yeah.
They don't tell us that boycott lasted longer than a year.
hmm
So
And I think it would be hard for a lot of black people to strike for a year. But at the same time, I think there are a lot of black celebrities with wealth
yeah,
that if they use their wealth the right way, they might be able to really support the black people with less. But like I said, it's going to take sacrifice from a lot of these people.
right.
And I don't think a lot of black people are willing to give up, like, their standard of living for other people, whether they're black or white.
I feel as though if we actually, again, going back to the quote, know thyself, and you learn more about your people's culture historically, you start realizing like my people are very communalist type of people. Like, they work together in the past. Like, that's one of the reasons why we try to push group economics to some extent. Um, Whenever you start actually reading more about previous movements like the Black Panthers and their political ideology and whatnot, they actually were having doctors aid people, without having to pay them an exuberant amount of money. Um, they actually did have, they were the reason why we have free breakfast programs today. To be honest, we didn't have that before them. So whenever you see people that the government quote unquote wants to call thugs or criminals that are actually helping the community, finding ways to do it with less means than the government actually has themselves, and that actually shows that flaw in the government. So it's like we have been able to work together in the past. So when you mention like our celebrities that have millions of dollars, um, I honestly feel as though they could do a lot more. It's kind of
Most definitely.
frustrating to see them post things and like be supporting Black Lives Matter and whatnot.
And they're still amassing how much wealth they are,
Yeah,
and using, people who have less than as a way to do that.
right. Like for instance, I think this summer people were getting on Drake because he posted something which was basically flexing, right? And I see people that always defend our celebrities, and like, you don't know what they do with their money, you don't know what they do behind the scenes, and blah 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 or anything. But one, I actually do want to see them doing those things, because then you can actually start cultivating that culture and having people sit there and think, oh dang, so and so, or the person I look up to is actually giving back to the community. So therefore I can also do that. We can start cultivating that culture that way, because we know that we are musically inclined people, or we're the top entertainers in the entire world. Like we know the world looks at us for entertainment. So therefore we can move based off of who we look up to. That's basically what we do nowadays anyway. Like, why did we start sagging? Because famous people were doing it. Nobody actually, when you look at the history of sagging, it's like, why am I about to be sagging when that came from prison? So therefore, we know people move based off of who we look up to. And two, I don't think it takes that much money to make a big difference when you're a celebrity. I don't think it will take your entire bank account. Therefore, like, I don't necessarily care that you're buying a Lambo or stuff like that, but match that with something else and publicly do it. If you can publicly display a material type of thing that all the people that supported you to get that success, to even buy that car or that watch or whatever, are struggling out here. Like, if you know that they are the reason why you even have that in the first place, why can't you give back to them? Why can't you match that image with something else that makes people actually want to act themselves in a positive manner? My bad. I know I just talked a lot right there.
Oh, my bad. I was muted. No, you were good. I just saw that Daisha came into the stream. I want to add her in here.
All right, bet. What's up, fam?
What up? What up? Oh,
Oh,
she left. In and out, man. In and out. Um. So
I see some comments though. I see
yeah. I see Marcus said he wants to black out and boycott for the whole month of February. Forget one day. Fact. And it would be dope if it wasn't just America. It'd be dope if it was like a global strike.
yeah.
But to do something like that, I think it's going to take a lot of organization that Black people just don't have, because it's not going to be just on lot of book club members that strike to make an impact. We have to be organized on a certain political level to make something like that effective.
I think you actually have to teach people how to be self-sufficient first as well.
Yeah.
Like, if everybody that is your ally knew how to garden, if everybody knew how to do something that could sustain life for that amount of time, or security for that amount of time, to make people feel comfortable. Because the one thing that pushes people away from this type of change is the fact that they're comfortable. They're afraid of what's different, or they're afraid of what that change might entail, what that might be. I would love to see a national blackout boycott and everything, but I know that if you can't give somebody else something that makes them feel comfortable about it, it's not going to happen.
And
Like,
just to add to that, like, I feel I got my own thought about holidays and whatnot, but if you do that in February, people just spent all their savings in December, on Christmas presents and Valentine's Day and New Year's. I think people, like, effectively, people could probably save that money,
yeah,
and survive February without working. You know
facts.
what I'm saying? Like, but people
Holidays,
just kind of don't think like that, huh?
holidays kind of piss me off.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Most of them Hallmark makers, bro. Like, they just make money for somebody else.
Yeah, and have you read the narrative of Frederick Douglass?
Yeah.
And he has a point that's about holidays that stands out to me, like, totally. And he talks about how during these holidays, the slaves were taught to live in excess. So they were taught to drink and get drunk. And so that when these holidays came around, that that after effect of being drunk and expressing freedom in that way kind of repulses, like, the slaves away from freedom, and kind of wants them to keep working. And I feel like holidays kind of have that same type of effect on people now. It might be a little different, but I think it still has that lasting effect, as where holidays are kind of just like a way to keep us almost complacent, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, or satisfied with what we have.
I think when people actually look at the history of some of these holidays, you might not want to celebrate them. What's up?
Oh, y'all can see
Hey,
me.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, you're in here.
Alright.
You're in here.
My bad. My everything was acting weird. I was trying to like get it on. It just wasn't coming up. All right, but I was really just joining in to kind of piggyback off of Marcus's comment, and it was a lot to say, so I didn't want to try to type all that. But can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we
yeah,
get you.
Oh, okay, cool. So when he was saying he was trying to, no, not Marcus' comment. It was someone who said, "Oh, it took a year." Who was that? Was that Marcus?
Wesley's.
Yeah, it was
Oh,
with.
Wesley's. Yeah, it took a year for the boycott. So what a lot of people don't know about the boycott is not only did it take a year, but I think I learned this for the first time. Jalen probably already knew, but when we went to the museum, we were watching those short films. It was talking about how they started carpooling. A bunch of people got together and they were, not having buses, but vans, and doing other things to support one another, to make sure everybody got to work, to make sure just to support each other. And it's 2020. We have Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. We have so many personal connections and so many quick ways to connect with one another. There
Cash App.
shouldn't be there. Yeah, there should not be a reason why we can't, all boycott. Not everything, but anything that's not for us. Like, if let's just say Target released some racist stuff, every black person that worked at Target that day should be like, "All right, here go you get my red shirt and my khakis today. I see. Peace out."
Yeah,
Like that's a large, like, nobody's gonna think, oh, if a Starbucks says something racist, every black person who works for your company is going to quit.
right.
That's not something that's real. It's storming so bad and my power is out, so I'm sorry if it's loud, but
No,
So,
that's not something people see realistically happening, because a lot of people don't have, you know not the gut. Yeah, the gut. I mean, that's a scary thing. I don't even think I would have the guts to do that. You get what I'm saying? They're like, hey, yeah, they said something racist, so we all got to quit your main source of,
no, I feel like you did that before,
income.
right? You said earlier you did that.
Oh yeah, yeah, but see, that was my second. That was a little part-time gig. That was a part-time
Okay.
gig. I'm saying that, but see, that was TLC. That was something a little bit. Let's just say if I was working, like I said, for like Target or something, I was a manager, and the CEO of Target somewhere so far away from me, but that's still 6 degrees of separation because I worked within that company.
Right.
But something so far, I don't even have to deal with the CEO. You get what I'm saying? I've been working for Target for 5 years. They've been paying my bills. I'm good. CEO going on the television to say something crazy. I can't really say I will walk into Target that day and quit my job if I saw a post on Instagram saying everybody who's black, there's somebody sent out some mass like everybody who works for Target that's black, we need to go ahead and just leave this company and boycott it. I can't say that I will go in and be like, nah, but
hmm
that's a lot. We hold that power. We
Yeah.
do collectively as a people, but it's really hard to like organize that, to get that together. But I just think it's crazy about the bus boycott. They didn't tell us that in school. My teacher wasn't like, yeah, they boycotted the buses and they were carpooling each other, meeting each other in neighborhoods, making sure people had, like, people were cooking for people. You know what I'm saying? Like, they don't tell us that. They just like, oh yeah, they boycotted for a month. This happened. Boom, boom. I mean, not even it was a year, but you get what I'm saying. There's just a lot of information that we miss. I feel like collectively as a people, we don't even realize we have, for real.
Yeah, and I think Angela Davis talks about that a little bit. Well, she talks about the bus boycott and how it was really the individual of acts of like average people that really drove that boycott, and without that, it wouldn't have been possible. And she specifically talked about domestic workers, like black women who were domestic workers,
Mhm.
and how they were the ones who were probably most affected because they had to travel into white communities in order to do work in their houses and their and in their communities, and they were walking to work.
Mhm.
And so I think that's just one way people don't realize how, like, as an individual, even at a small level, if all individuals work together, we can have a greater impact.
I think one thing that I realized when I was like, I know I read, like, I love Amos Wilson. Again, appreciate you for introducing me to that brother. Um, one thing that he points out about that's different about Eurocentric education and Afrocentric education was like you're saying how Eurocentric education and ideology and thought does push you towards that instant gratification, and it doesn't teach you like those life lessons. It teaches you stuff for like literally right now, what to do now, and to be selfish, individualistic type of progression that pushes this capitalist system forward. Whereas, as we know, all great things take time. Therefore, like when we're in this time where I can literally text a whole conversation to somebody and have that thing done in like 5 minutes, or you can literally scam somebody out of some money in less than a minute. Like there's so many things that are like instant gratification now. Like you post a picture, you want 500 likes right away, or else you feel like crap. Like I need to delete that, or somebody like people. You're so in that white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal, racist, sexist system that you want everything right now. But stuff like this takes so long to like it took 400 years to get where we are right now from 1619 to get where we are. One thing changed the whole course of history.
Mhm.
And I think like I have so much faith in the TikTok generation. I truly do. If any of y'all are watching, I have faith for y'all, for y'all, all of y'all, because I feel like y'all are some exceptional people, or going to be some exceptional people with all this information that's coming in right now. But if you're so caught on that instant gratification, thinking you're gonna have a band-aid type of answer on something that needs a whole full out 72-hour surgery multiple times, then you're never gonna progress. And I feel like that's one thing that got us so caught up and all these little things that have been success to some extent, going back to civil rights, black power, getting people like Colin Powell in the office when we know Colin Powell ain't really for us, or getting somebody like Clarence Thomas in the Supreme Court when we know Clarence Thomas ain't really for us. Getting these token people in there, or getting into these schools that make you think that you're so called educated. Like, and again, like I don't subscribe to thinking that just because you went to Harvard or some top school that makes you intelligent. That just means you educated. It don't mean you're intelligent. So it's like certain things that seem like they're so great actually need some critical analysis and some reflection, some introspection, and some time to actually think. And this whole system doesn't give us that time to think, that time to sit down and say, hey, like we need an actual 100-year plan. Hey, we
Yeah.
don't need a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, 20. We need like 100, 200-year plan. Like you can't, nothing tomorrow is going to fix 400 years worth of oppression.
And I think Barack Obama kind of touched on this when he was leaving his presidency. He was like, the effect of what happened during my presidency, you're not going to see right now. You're going to see that, you might see that 50, 100 years down the line. And I think that's kind of, as you know, we're trying to be revolutionary people and revolutionary thinkers. We got to start thinking in that way. Like, we got to fight today so we see a better future, not tomorrow, but maybe like years down the line.
Yeah.
And we gotta keep up the fight.
I
Um,
think
go ahead, Desha.
Yeah.
somebody in the comments actually hit on Angela Davis' opinion about Barack Obama coming into office, and talking about how it should have been you know, we got that momentum, we got that gratification of, oh, we got a black president now. Okay, racism is over. We're good. That there's
Right.
no such thing as racism anymore. We have a black president. So I can't remember the exact statement that she was saying. I wish I had the book right here so I could quote it, but that really spoke a lot. I mean, whatever, I don't remember what his comment was or exactly what her comments were, but whatever she said, what she said, it made me think about the fact that, like you said earlier, and actually earlier when we were talking, when we get one thing, we feel like, okay, yeah, we're good. We don't, our momentum slows down. But with Barack Obama, she said we should have, got together collectively and made it more of a mass movement. I cannot remember exactly what she said. Let me see. I'm sorry.
No, that's all good. And just to bring that point back to Obama, she talks about Obama and how he had a speech on the March of Washington, and how he addressed that, you know, he addressed that freedom struggles are unfinished, and that we need to focus on continuing these struggles and not the closure of these struggles. But then she also says, but invoking the old adage, I must say that actions really do speak louder than words.
Right.
So I think she kind of saying like, yeah, Obama's saying this, but like, what is Obama really doing? She was kind of taking a jab at Obama a little bit
Yeah,
in that sense.
You got to, man.
and
You can't idolize any of these people to an extent where you can't even sit there and say one negative thing about them. Like, yeah, you were the first black president. Yes, you did great, but you also bombed everybody over there in the Middle East more than anybody else. Like, you with them drone strikes, and you did that more than Bush did. So, like, what exactly are you that great that I can't acknowledge that as well? That's also a truth. That's a fact that you did that.
that's what she said. Marcus actually said it. Holding him accountable for fighting for oppressed and marginalized people. Like, we were just so happy that we had a black president. You could not say anything bad about him. Like,
Yeah.
Obama, what? Oh, no. Obama is perfect. He would never. Da 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 da. But we were just so happy that we had a black president. We weren't focused on holding him accountable for all the things that could have. I've never ran a country, so I don't know specifically what all comes with that, or where his hands were tied or were not tied. But
Mhm.
as a people, we didn't hold him accountable for making the world a better place for us.
Change,
Yeah.
as he said,
Yeah.
change.
Or even speaking on it.
Yeah.
I think he was silent in a lot of moments where we kind of needed him to not be silent. Or not the fact that he was silent, is what he was saying.
I'd like to ask y'all a question. From one of the quotes from the book, Angela quoted Ella Baker when she said, "Strong people don't need a strong leader." And I'd like to know y'all thoughts on that. What do y'all think about it? Strong people don't need a strong leader.
I'll tell you what I think. What I might have interpreted that line as. I just feel like she might be saying strong people, a strong group,
Right.
working together collectively can make a lot more noise, do a lot more movement, make a lot more change than one singular strong person. That's like being a good player on a trash team. I would rather be the worst player on a good team than the best player on the worst team.
Exactly. David Lee still got a ring from the Warriors.
Right. Or Udonis Haslem on the bench for the Heat.
Right. Yeah, it's Steph Curry and LeBron, but he got a ring.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with what you said.
Okay, yeah. I feel like that's one of the things that we're lacking, because, like, kind of how we mentioned earlier, and we were talking earlier, where it's kind of like someone gets you put so much faith in one or two, three, four, five people. When they get assassinated, or when they become imprisoned, or when something happens to those individuals, then a lot of our momentum drops. A lot of people's hopes drop. Like, a lot of people's faith is lost. And I think that's one of the positive things of the Black Lives Matter movement, that those three women that created it, that started it, yeah, they are the people that created it, but they're not the face of it. Like, they let other people take that reign, which can be a positive and negative thing, but that keeps it from somebody setting them up and assassinating them, like MLK, Malcolm X, or Fred Hampton, and so on.
But it also keeps, specifically black women from, I think, understanding their true power and in many ways. Because I know Angela Davis, she talks about how we need to have a leaderful movement,
Mm-hmm.
and how leadership is not always a male prerogative, and women have always done the work of organizing black radical movements, and that when women come together, earth-shaking changes occur. That's a quote from her book. She says earth-shaking changes occur. So if we memorialize the civil rights movement as Dr. King, maybe black people may feel empowered to be civil rights activists. I'm not civil rights activists, but black power activists and fighting for freedom. But I don't think that empowers women the same way.
Right. I see that. Oh, my bad, though. So you can go.
No, I was about to say, and since you have the book in your hand, Jalen,
Yeah.
I feel like maybe within that same area, didn't she talk about she was like some woman who set up the first meeting for women at a national conference, something, and then she was like, and that made room for Obama to.
Fannie Lou Hamer.
Yes, there
Yeah.
we go. Yeah. I have it highlight. I just don't have to look up.
Yeah. If anybody that's watching this has not looked up Fannie Lou Hamer, please do yourself do yourself a favor and look her up, and look up her story and how Lyndon B. Johnson tried to sabotage her speech. But continue, Daisha.
No, that's all. I was saying,
okay.
Again, people even forget about Shirley Chisholm.
Yeah.
Yeah. They,
Harriet Colvin. They forget about her before Rosa Parks, and then they make Rosa Parks seem like she only sat on a bus when she was actually an organizer before.
Exactly. She was like high up in the NAACP. I want to say, like, that's why she was able to make the face. She knew about the first person that did it, and she was like, and she was like, as we spoke, I don't even remember what book I was reading, but as we spoke about it, as she spoke about it around the people around them, they were always talking about what they would do next, and if that was to ever happen to them. And she said if it was to ever happen to her, she wouldn't get up. And a month later or so, she was on the bus, so and so happened, and she didn't get up, and then boom, Montgomery boycott. There we go.
Can I tell y'all something? It made me feel so sad last night.
What's that?
Man, and this is something you can, me and Haven analyze it, where like, even though this happened, we didn't. All right. Basically, the situation. We were sitting in the car, and you know how, like, those moments when people trying to get into a parking space, but then somebody else might be waiting for it, and then somebody steals that parking space from them.
Mm-hmm.
So, granted, we don't know if she was waiting for that parking space or not. She might have been just waiting for somebody to come down and get picked up or whatever. But she was in front of this parking spot, and from my perspective, it seemed like she might have wanted to back into that parking spot. So she was trying to wave the other person behind her to go, and this was a black woman. So she's trying to wave the woman behind her to go, and I'm just like, in my head, well, I'm actually saying it out loud too. I was like, put your blinker on, put your hazard lights on, like let them know you sitting here. She didn't do it, but what ended up happening was she just ended up driving off. Like, you could see like the frustration on her face. She, all right, shoot, I'm just gonna drive off. And the car behind her just so happened to be a white woman, and she just pulled right into that parking lot. And I'm laughing now, but you can even ask, hey, in that moment, I was upset. I was like sad for myself. Yeah, I was upset for myself and my character because I was like, dang, I can't. I wish he would have stayed because I would have had your back. I would have had your back, man. Like I wanted that moment so that we can make sure I got you. I got you. And it was just the fact that it just so happened to be a white woman behind her that had to take that spot from her. Damn, my bad for these messages. And I was like, man, wow. Modern day, and a pure example of the black man not getting like I didn't get a chance to stick up for you right there, and I was like, if you could have just stayed, you didn't know I would have had your back, but I had you. I was like, I spent a good second talking to Haven about it. I was like, man, I'm upset for you in this moment. And it just like I don't know if the girl in behind her knew it was a black woman in front of her. I don't even know if the woman that was in the front knew it was a white woman behind her or anything. But just being the objective figure in that moment outside of the situation, watching it happen, I was just like, man, here's another moment of the black woman not getting her justice, and it just seems like that's a reoccurring theme throughout time that really needs to change, because I truly believe as we progress, we're moving towards a matriarchy system. Right? Maybe not in my lifetime, maybe not even the next, but I honestly do believe that that's what's gonna happen, and the sooner the better. Because if I'm looking at historical evidence, it's like she said, it's shape the worlds. So yeah,
That's
that
real.
was my little story.
Stuff like that pisses me off too, man.
Yeah, and I was mad. I was like, man, I could have helped you, bro.
Right. And it's hard not making little things like that such a big deal
Yeah,
because in the grand scheme of things, that's a small thing, but you still like kind of just allowing that person to exercise their privilege.
microaggressions, man.
Yeah.
Like when those little microaggressions add up, that's when you have the feeling like f everybody else because they don't know my story. They don't. They keep on hitting me like it's like when someone like that little kid is like right in your face saying, "I'm not touching you. I'm not
Yeah.
touching you." They're just tapping you over and over, and it's so annoying. And by the time it just adds up, and you got all that built up frustration, and then now you got people talking about angry black woman. It's like, nah, bro, this stuff been happening to her all day long. Like, it's been happening all year long. This is
Right.
that one moment that blew it over. So, yeah, that's frustrating, man.
That's why the Breonna Taylor and George Floyd situation, not situation, but just the reality of everything that happened with both of them and so many others is it really kind of breaks my heart. Granted, there was a whole video, of George Floyd,
Mm-hmm.
but let's even go back to because Breonna Taylor died before him, and there were articles out before her, and this. Of course, I at the end of the day, I really feel like besides the video of what happened to George Floyd and the fact that the whole world was shut down due to coronavirus, the fact that people had to sit with themselves and sit at home, and white people had to not only look at everything that's going on, they're looking at coronavirus, they're looking at the president, they're looking at George Floyd, they're looking at death on death on death, and they're looking at people consistently sharing stuff. And then, protests started. But let's go all the way back to like Sandra Bland. Like there were, you know, I just, I'm not saying I don't, well, no, I am saying I don't see as much movement for women as
Mm-hmm.
it is for
It's not.
men. And it really breaks my heart. Like it's really like sad. And I'm not saying that, you know even down to dating, I'm not saying that black women don't go date other races, but it is like almost, what is the word I want to say,
Like pimp.
glorified for black men to date outside of their race or to date a woman that is anything other than black. that is foreign or look a little foreign. Granted, I'm not saying that Ethiopian is African. That's black. But to some men, that's they consider that foreign. I mean, which it is. It's a foreign country. It's a whole different continent. So
As long as they don't say
um
exotic.
as on there
As
said
long as
what?
they don't say exotic.
Oh yeah, but that's what they would call. She looked exotic or something, so I want to date her. But I mean, an African American woman is one of the least desirable women in America, which is crazy
Yeah.
because we make up a large population, and I think we're quite gorgeous. But not only are we like the least desirable, because we are one of the least desirable, I don't feel like people make a lot of movement for us. It's a whole separate like entity. There's black people. I mean, well, I think that's with everything, but still, I just feel like it's a separation, especially when it comes to justice. Or I feel like as black women, we have a lot of empathy for black men because we know what you go through. We are your mothers. We raise black men, black kings. So not only are we worried about them on that level of we're loving them, but on the level of raising them. So, and we're women, so we're going to have a lot more empathy than men. But black men do not have black women's backs.
No.
How?
And I think the say her name movement has its inception in that problem, you know. And I think that people think that the police brutality is only against black men, or they feel like it attacks black men specifically, where the actuality is that it affects black women equally.
I would say oh wait, continue, my bad.
No, you good, you good.
Um a perfect example of what we're talking about right now is how at UGA, I think it was in spring 2018 or fall 2018, one of those periods somewhere. It was one of these recent years. They actually had a memorial for all the women that have been killed by police in that time period. And when I pulled up, I realized there was really only about 5 males there, and two of us were performers. So, like myself and someone else was performing. 3 others were just there to spectate, contribute, and participate in the memorial event, like where we lighted the candles and everything. And I was like, wow, we really showing right here. We still not supporting. Like you have a chance to just pull up and listen to the women talking right here, and listen to all these names that are said that's been lost within these last few years. And it was only 5 of us. I was like, wow, we really just don't be supporting. We really don't. And it didn't make sense to me at that time period. And it still doesn't make sense to me now. But I love Marcus's comment right there, because we still see that as well, man. They did not call that Kenosha killer white on white crime at all.
Angry white woman.
I've never heard that.
Well, now we call them Karens.
Right. True.
Yeah, we
We're
finally
just
got a
coined a
label.
term
We
for it.
finally got a
We're
label
just
for
more
them.
creative, Karen
Yeah.
is angry
Yeah.
white woman. Ain't got time for that.
Well, we have. I would say we should go until probably about 9 o'clock. But I kind of want to touch on like make sure we touch on the rest of the book.
Yeah.
Um,
Or the rest of the chapters.
yeah. Um, so one thing that I kind of wanted that stood out to me was when she brought up the Black Panther Party and their 10-point program, and how everything that was in their 10-point program was still pretty relevant today.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be cool if we kind of just like looked at the 10-point program and went through it.
Definitely.
Because that's something that we talked about doing before. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually add it into the stream.
Okay. Appreciate that.
And
I was definitely looking it up.
where, boom. Okay. So here are the 10 demands of the Black Panthers 10-point program. We want freedom, We want the power to determine the destiny of our black community. We want full employment of our people. We want an end to the robbery by capitalists of our black and oppressed communities. Let me actually enlarge this so we can a
Thank
little
you.
legible.
Because
So couldn't see that.
Okay. We want decent housing fit for shelter of human beings. We want education of our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in the present day society. And that's kind of something that's probably what stood out to me the most. Um, not the most, but within the writing, that's one that stood out to me the most is the call for education. We want all black men to be exempt from military service. We want immediate end to police brutality, which, as we all see, we're still fighting for today. We want freedom for all black men held in federal, state, county, and city prisons. How we were just saying, why don't say black women? That's just a thought of mine. We want all black people, when brought to trial, to be tried in a court by a jury of their peer group or people in their black communities as defined by the Constitution of the United States. And we want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. Y'all have any thoughts about these? It's okay. It's okay if y'all don't. But
I do. I thought Zach was about to say something, but I didn't.
Oh, my bad. My bad. I didn't even hear you. I was speaking.
Oh no.
oh,
He asked if
you
we had
good.
any
I was just
thoughts.
asking if y'all had any thoughts about these.
Oh, they're all still relevant today. Like all, like for instance, freedom. Like we're still fighting for that full employment. You see, I guess unemployment rates today are out the roof because of COVID, obviously, but that should have been handled by the people that are in charge of our government. Um, Three, an end to the robbery by the capitalists of our black and oppressed communities. Like that still happens. Decent housing fit for shelter and human beings. Like that's something that's hard to find unless somebody's gentrifying your area. Um, all of this is still relevant. Education that exposes your true nature, true history. Like we've been talking about that this whole thing. We we're re-educating ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like the purpose of what we do here.
Yeah.
Is to give a true education and
So,
expose the decadent nature of American society. I love that word.
Yeah.
I'm
Now you
curious about what you said.
continue.
I was like, I'm curious about number 6, right? Because earlier when we were on the call, when we were talking about when they came back from Vietnam, a lot of soldiers who came back from Vietnam are the people who actually helped to come make up, the Black Panther Party or be a part of Black Panthers. And so I wonder why we want all black men to be exempt from military service, because they feel like they're fighting for a country that doesn't have their back, most definitely. But I'm just curious as to why it was exempt from military service completely. You get what I'm saying? Instead of, I'm just curious. I
Instead of
think
what?
that that's the one
I
point.
Instead of what?
well,
I mean, I don't know. I'm just wondering. I mean, I understand the purpose of why it's on here, but that's just for my interpretation of history. And I guess I wonder, like, sitting down in that meeting, what was it like? Hey, none of us need to be in the military. Like, why?
I feel
Because
like that.
now this is an honor. Well, to some people, I still don't think it is.
I feel like that it was that one they're over there fighting for causes that are not them, like not theirs. Two, um, like you were saying, an injustice anywhere is an injustice to people everywhere. So like if we're fighting for all these things here in America, why would we go out to another country and do these same things to another people? That's kind of my perception. Deju Bro, who is actually my father, shout out to my father. He said number 6 may come from an era when there was a draft.
Yeah.
You
I,
know,
I,
so
I wanted to touch on one. Women could volunteer in the Vietnam War, but they weren't. They were excluded from that draft. The draft is actually one of the things that actually helped catapult us in our plight as far as Black Power. Because it wasn't just that was one of the things that helped us organize around, because even white people didn't like there were people, white liberals that didn't want to be drafted either. They were burning their draft cards. So that actually helped us establish an allyship with somebody that's also a part of an oppressive race. Um, and I think what was it? Um, shoot, I'll say you did touch on the fact that it's not our war. It's like hypocrisy to throw us in the front of that. But dang, I'm sorry. There was one more thing that like that actually that point right there actually touched on and helped. Apologies for drawing a blank,
No,
but
it's
you
okay. We're
good, man.
just fighting
Take
for
your
a
time.
country that I don't feel like has our back. That's my biggest thing. Like, I'm not trying to go to war for.
oh, I remember now. Okay, fun fact. Okay, Vietnam, where we actually had like back then, they used to actually have more drafts. Like it was something that was reoccurring. It wasn't like there was one big draft or something like that. Like it was a reoccurring thing. And the fun fact about Vietnam is that it had the lowest number of draftees since like they actually started doing drafts. Like it actually started slowly declining. But still was a major factor. Like the thing that actually tipped them off was that it was the Pentagon that actually had a report that actually showed that the black men that were out there were being disproportionately killed and being put on the front lines versus everybody else. So the government actually just had a hiccup and let the information get out there and show like, hey, like what we going over here for? We keep
Right.
on throwing us in the front. So that's another one of those factors that kind of help propel us forward in our progression. As far as number 6,
And also, like, they used to not even let us into the military.
No.
You know, the civil rights. I mean, the Civil War was when they first allowed us into the military. Well, I think they probably allowed us.
Revolutionary War.
Huh? The Revolutionary War, yeah. But also in the civil, like when the Civil War started, at first they didn't want black people among the ranks, and then they had the 54th Regiment of Massachusetts. I can't remember the exact name, but even then, in Fort Wagner, they threw them into the war first, and they were wiped out. You know, and I think that's crazy how we go from not they didn't want us to, like, we couldn't be in there, and then okay, now y'all in there and y'all the first ones to go in. Y'all boys go in.
Do you know about our Buffalo Soldiers?
Not entirely. If you could teach me something,
So I'll say they were kind of like a precursor for the men on the front lines in Vietnam. Essentially, um, it was like a black unit. I'm not exactly sure with the military terms, so I'm saying unit just in case. Hopefully, people understand what I mean. But it was basically a black unit that a lot of their, I guess, generals or whatever, they didn't even want them in the first place. Like they underfunded and didn't give them enough weaponry and everything, but they used them to actually wipe out a lot of the Native Americans or the indigenous people. And the thing is like they also, in hindsight, probably with more information, probably would sit there and realize, wow, I sat there and wiped out a whole bunch of people for my oppressor. So that's why I say they're kind of like a precursor for the men that were on the front line for Vietnam, because they kind of get left behind in history when in reality they did what a lot of the white units couldn't even do themselves. Um, and it's kind of sad, but it's like, wow, they again another point in history where they just used us to have this great Western migration and started trying to say what's it called? Manifest destiny, saying that it's just my destiny to come over and expand to this land. Use us for that, and didn't give us any of it again. So, um,
disgusting.
Yeah, just fun fact right there.
Okay. So maybe we can hop off of this and go into chapter 7, and I think that might be a good point for us to end off at because it's about to be 9 o'clock. But she ends off chapter 6 talking about how terrorism is represented as external, but it is very much a domestic phenomena and has shaped the history of the United States. And she talks about in the beginning of chapter 6 about how terrorism has been applied to black liberation movements in the 60s and 70s, and I'm going to take that even further as it's continuing. I think Black Lives Matter protests are seen as terrorists by the state in many
Yeah,
ways, and even like average Americans, like mostly white Americans. But
Didn't Donald Trump call him a terrorist group or somebody called him a terrorist
they
group? I
they
feel
actually
like.
have. She has a book. One of the leaders, I think it's the lady named Patrice. Maybe I recently read it. It's called When They Call You a Terrorist.
mm,
And she does actually go through her experience from youth to where she is now, like explaining how since she was a child, the system has been screwing with her family, and basically her brother was in and out of prison because he was misdiagnosed. Like I may be wrong, but he had some he had a mental disorder. I can't fully remember what exactly it was, like bipolar or schizophrenic. I can't remember exactly what it was. They were over medicating him, over medicating. I said that right? Over medicating him. Um, they weren't giving him the right meds, and anytime he was out, when she had a mental breakdown, they would always call the police. And at one point, she didn't even want to call it. Like, it got to a point where she was like telling the officer at her door, like, if I let y'all come in here, do not arrest my brother. And it seemed like she was being hit with terrorists in her own community, her own house, and everything all her life.
mhm,
And then whenever she actually gets to become an activist and stand out and get her voice out there, then the world calls her a terrorist.
right.
So it's actually a pretty good book. Recommend anybody to check it out if y'all ever get
What's
the
the name of
time.
the book again?
When They Call You a Terrorist.
I'm just type this up there so people.
So yeah, you're definitely right. It still does happen. That's what I love about what Angela's mentioned, where she was like, at the time period when she read it, when she was saying like, Asada Shakur is 66 years old, and they put her right back on the terrorist list.
Yeah,
She's not
and
doing nothing in Cuba.
she pointed out that when she was like when she was shot, her hands were in the air and she was paralyzed, so she couldn't have grabbed the gun that they claimed that she grabbed.
Right.
And she tied that to the point that whenever she wrote this book, in the past 4 years previous, the Chicago police have killed 63 people and they shot 253 people, 172 which were black and 27 which were of Latinx descent. So it's like, who are the real terrorists in the country?
Yeah.
Yeah. And most of these people are just fighting for basic human rights and liberty, and it's twisted for them to be labeled as terrorists. But it's really been America since its inception that's been bringing the terror to this country, and she even brings it back to the genocide of the indigenous people. But even she
Yes.
says herself, she was placed on the top 10 most wanted list.
Right.
You know,
And she's like, "What is this all about?" Like,
has she ever killed anybody or violently attacked anybody or But
that just shows how powerful the mind is, because it's all about an ideology.
hmm
And it shows like whenever you think for yourself, you become dangerous, and that's why it was illegal for us to read, which is why we started this whole thing in the first place.
And they put her on the terrorist list at like a big celebration. I think it was like the 15th or 50th year celebration or
Yeah,
something. I don't really remember what it was, but
it
so
was
it was already
Black Panthers.
a huh.
It was about to be the 50th celebration of the Black Panthers.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was, it was already a lot of, I guess because the Black Panthers even formed 50 years ago, this is what we gonna do. We're gonna put this 66-year-old one. Like, it's almost like it was like in spite of or in retaliation, but why?
This woman in
66-year-old
Cuba
lady.
who we ain't heard from.
Just to put,
Right?
I just I'm kind of pre touching on something that she touched on later on, but why is just to instill fear. At least that's what is Angela's point.
Mhm.
Exactly.
It's like for anybody else that thinks to step up, oh shoot, we can make you a terrorist, and everybody's gonna believe you a terrorist.
Yep.
And that's the actual scary thing about media to me personally, because whenever it's out there, somebody's gonna believe it. And there are some crazy people out here that are willing to burn down your house, that are willing to assassinate you. That's how you have that Kyle Rittenhouse dude driving 20 miles to a whole nother area to supposedly protect some property when you really just had intent to go kill somebody. So that's one scary thing about media and all Donald Trump's rhetoric and stuff is like you talking so reckless. You risking people's lives. You putting people's lives at risk.
And that makes me think about that Huey P. Newton quote that I posted a couple times this week, that the first lesson a revolutionary must learn is that he's a doomed man. And I had a friend who told me that that was a negative affirmation that he placed upon himself. And I personally don't agree.
I
I
don't
feel
need.
like in the eyes of the state, as acting as a revolutionary, you are the antithesis. Like you're acting exactly in the opposite of the United States and the state, and that's why they do it. I don't think that's something that he brought upon himself that came to his own destruction. But I think if you act in those manners and if you act out against white supremacy, capitalism, racism, sexism, that you know the state attacks you.
Yeah. I'd like to ask, did that friend that said that, did they read a lot?
Actually, I think they do. I
Mm.
think they do.
He
Yeah.
might be on that spiritual side where it's like you don't want to speak those negative things out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
For instance, I'm never gonna buy one of those I can't breathe shirts. Like, I'm not about to put that on my body. Like, why am I about to do that and manifest that shit? But
Hmm.
when you analyze history, I mean, you have the one white guy that literally risked his entire, like John Brown, like literally till his last dying breath. He just said, like, if I was doing this for some white folks, y'all would have said I was a hero. But since I'm doing it for black people, you trying to kill me.
Yeah. And
Uh,
John Brown was a hero, man. Big shout out to John Brown.
but,
Yeah.
so just going all the way back to that, you see Nat Turner, you killed him.
Right.
You go. Who else? Who else is out there? And
Vesey. Denmark Vesey. Marcus Garvey.
he
MLK.
yeah, it's
Malcolm X.
too many names.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like it doesn't take me that much common sense to see, because if you're a true revolutionary, and that means you're really thinking differently than other people. And one thing that we know throughout history is when you think differently, people treat you differently. And it doesn't matter if it's positive or not, like you're going to get some negative reactions to something different. So it's like I don't see how he sees that as a negative way to think about it. I feel like it's more liberating than negative, because it gives you that freedom to choose. You're like, I know, but I'm also going to keep fighting for this because I know there's no other way.
Yeah.
I think one thing Cornel West, is it Cornel West or somebody? Yeah, I think it was Cornel West, where he said that Mother Teresa's one sentence that she said about MLK after he died was that he learned that here's a man that learned how to die every day. And I think that's something that when you actually truly want to be a part of the change, you have to learn how to die every day. And in more than one type of way, not necessarily someone assassinating you or you killing yourself or something like that, but just in the sense of being an open vessel to knowing what's next. So your old thoughts, they perish once you have new revolutionary thoughts and change. You have somebody that wakes up and knows they're going into dangerous territory and still do it. You know that you have to kill that ego in order to help other people.
Mm.
And that's something, right? Like, granted, we always talk about learn how to live every day like it's the last and everything, but to learn how to die every day, that's something. I feel like that's another level that I feel like we could all learn something from.
It takes real sacrifice.
Yeah.
That's real.
Um,
I seen. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
no. You can go.
No, I wasn't about to say nothing relevant about the book, so you just go ahead.
I was going to touch on one of the quotes from the book. It's
Yeah.
in that last chapter that we read. She said one of the major examples of the violence of racism consists of the rearing of generations of Black people who have not learned how to imagine the future, who are not now in possession of the education and the imagination that allows them to envision the future. That touches on what we talked about before when we say like these school systems, they don't teach you how to think, they teach you what to think. So you're not even really taught how to imagine things anymore.
Yeah.
Because you're just sitting there focused on what somebody's telling you. Like 2 + 2 = 4 = 5. Like, you know.
But social
Yeah.
media also, to an extent, kills your imagination. It doesn't kill your imagination, but you're receiving images and information consistently. When we were children, even teenagers, because Instagram really didn't come out to like senior year of high school in real life,
How do you feel
and
about that?
Facebook was out in high school. Before that was maybe like MySpace, but whatever. We had time to sit and I don't even want to just say sit with ourselves, but it tells you what to want. You already
Yeah.
have an interest, so Instagram or Facebook or whatever is just pretty much reassuring you, okay, well, this is what you want, I'm gonna show it to you again, and then boom, you get it, and then it's like boom, yeah, this is what I want, and this person has it, and this person has it, so it's a cool thing. So this is all I want, and this is my future. This is
Yeah.
like, this is the best thing to have. That's it. There is nothing more past that. And what's the point of imagining more if Jay-Z got it? That's all I need. You know what I'm saying?
And the algorithm just throws it in your face. Like you said,
Right.
it consistently throws. So you like one picture, you can like one picture on that Explore page or of some big popular page, and it's gonna be right there in your face all day long, bro. I hate my Instagram feed now. Like all I do is look at folks' stories because I can't see anybody's posts anymore. So I just look at people's stories so I can try to see if they did post something new.
Mm.
And I'm like, bro, I don't need to see this new this like I started unfollowing these popular pages like men's fashion and stuff like that. I'm like, bro, I don't need to see the same, like it's the same suit over and over, dog. I'm not buying it. I'm broke. I can't afford it. Don't show it to me no more.
It's all money. That's all I see. It's money
Right.
on my timeline.
It's wild. I have one like I don't know if that last paragraph in chapter 7. I don't know if y'all read that one as much as I did as well, but where she says deep understandings of racist violence arm us. Deep understanding of racist violence arm us against deceptive solutions. When we are told that we simply need better police and better prisons, we counter with what we really need. We need to reimagine security, which would involve the abolition of policing and imprisonment as we know them. We will say demilitarize the police, disarm the police, abolish the institution of the police as we know it, and abolish imprisonment as the dominant mode of punishment. But we will have only just begun to tell the truth about violence in America.
Facts.
And
I like that I like that she provides some type of solutions.
yeah,
Yeah.
I,
Keep
I,
going.
I think that touches on what we were talking about earlier, not in this conversation, but in an earlier conversation when we kind of asked the question to our group earlier. We were saying like, how do you prevent infiltration and stuff like that? How do you prevent people that have malicious intent coming into your movement and steering it another way. And like she said, deep understanding, and like we were talking about earlier, like having that ideological understanding first, um and stuff like this, essentially, where you actually get a chance to critically analyze what's going on, what somebody's solutions are. Like, is black capitalism the answer? Is black capitalism different than regular capitalism as we see it's not? Is African socialism different than regular socialism as you see it's not? Like, so like you kind of you hear those little keywords and stuff like that, and you're like, oh, I already know what they're trying to say. Nah, that doesn't work, bro. And here's why it doesn't work. And or you hear somebody else say something else, and it's like, oh yeah, we know about that. We can revolutionize that and take it a little bit further. Like we've seen it that worked in the past with Angela Davis or George Jackson or whoever, Huey Newton, Amos Wilson, Kwame, whoever. We see that that's worked. Let's elevate on that. Let's move it forward. And I feel like that's what we're taking away from when we get so stuck in the system. When you're so busy that you can't even think. You're so caught up in materialism you can't think.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I'm just really glad she said that, and because I'm a huge advocate for restorative justice, and I think we need to implement a system of restorative justice rather than criminal justice. I think we need to stop criminalizing people, especially for non-violent crimes, and or even just like things that aren't their fault. You know what I mean? Like I think black people are criminalized for everything that they do almost. So I'm glad she says that, but she also points out another solution that I really attached to was she said that we need to learn how to talk about race and racism, and if we cannot talk about our actions, if we cannot talk about it, our actions will go in misleading directions. And I feel like, well, I'm gonna just keep going. She also says that we need to develop a vocabulary that permits us to have insightful conversations, and that's a large reason as to why one, I became an African American studies major, and why I enjoy studying things like this. Because if you can't accurately, tell the All Lives Matter supporter why he's wrong, then we not making any real motion in the country.
Right.
And I just think that's a large reason of why what we're doing here is so important. And she also says without the intersectionality of struggles, so without connecting our struggles to Palestine, to apartheid, to black men's struggles, to black women's struggles, without doing those things, we will never achieve significant victories because, like she said, the movement isn't going to be just like a small group of people. The movement for global freedom has to be a large, like it's going to have to be a global movement.
Right.
So I'm just really appreciative of the fact that she actually gave some solutions in here. Whereas we saw in Between the World and Me, he talked about a lot of problems, but he didn't really give many solutions.
Right.
Um, the the one thing that I truly appreciated about that last paragraph is she almost came full circle and reiterated again. Once we do all this, we've only just begun.
Yeah.
We've only
Yeah.
even just cracked the shell. We haven't even dug all the way deep into it. So pretty much reiterating, don't get complacent. Don't Once we have this one accomplishment, we have, it's just a battle. And we have a series of battles to get to before this war is over or won, or I don't even know what to even call it. But
Yeah.
before it's reached its point of maybe freedom. There it is. Yeah.
Hmm.
I feel like what both of y'all said is the two frustrating things. Because one, what you said with Jalen, I've seen people in comments on Facebook, you'll see the craziest stuff, man.
I love comments.
Like I'll see two people who have not actually got the chance to study this stuff or even fully think and introspect and everything. And I'll see a white person have that regular racist rhetoric, and the black person come back and say that's racist, and the white person like, why is that racist? And the black person's like, it's racist, and it's like, well, why?
Like you gotta help these people understand. Like you just saying this racist ain't really gonna get nobody nowhere.
At all, and that's so frustrating. And then what you're saying, Daisha, where it's like, bro, we have global environmental issues that are gonna take us all out if we don't. So we're sitting here on an elementary level thing. Like,
We were arguing about skin color,
bro, that's so stupid.
and this shit burning, man. This fucking hurricanes. You know. I'm
That's
cursing. I'm
frustrating.
cursing. Let me chill.
I'm like, bro, we still in first grade.
Yeah.
We didn't even move to third, middle school, high school, because y'all sit here just want to kill people, want to oppress people for money. And money's not even everything you want.
Mm.
As you see, like, you have so many famous people that's killed themselves. Money's not everything.
Money's not gonna save us when the world completely deteriorates.
Right.
Yeah.
It's gonna burn the money too.
The money is going with us. The money is going with us. It is nobody gonna be here. So I just
Imagine a hurricane pull up and like, hey, let me throw this 100,000 real quick at you. You know, like, hey, if you let me
just get my house.
I need a bill.
Get my house.
You can't even pay for that to happen. There's no amount of money in the world that could save your house from a natural disaster and everything else around you get destroyed.
Right.
So
that's a miracle, if so.
That is exactly what that would be.
Yeah.
Exactly what that would be. And I don't think you can pay for those.
Nah.
Not with money, at least. Not with money.
Word. Well, we're reaching that 2 hour mark. I think we're a little past 9 o'clock, but that's all right. But I feel like this is actually 9/11, and we talking about who the terrorists are in America. That's just a little weird. But I just want to say thank you to everybody who's watched this far, or everybody who's been on here previously. I appreciate your support and your activity. And I think for the next meeting, let's see. I think that would be a good thing to outline right now. For the next meeting, I think we could probably finish the book, honestly. Let's see, we got 9, 10. Yeah. We'll
chapters, right?
Yeah, it's only 2 chapters.
Oh, 2 left. Okay.
Yeah. So the next meeting we'll finish the book and we'll choose what we're gonna read next. I feel like that's a good agenda for the next meeting. So not this next Sunday, but the Sunday after at 7 p.m. we'll be meeting again. And it'll be on those last 2 chapters, chapters 9 and 10, and probably chapter 8, because we didn't really discuss chapter 8 at all. So we'll go over 8, 9, and 10 in our next meeting. And I just want to thank everybody. Thank you, Daisha, for coming on, being vulnerable and coming on and sharing your opinions with us. We really appreciate that. Thank you, Haven, for being there in the back on the side. We feel your presence always. And also I want to leave this off by wishing Zach a very happy birthday. A very happy born day.
Zach,
Yes, sir.
happy
Today's his day.
I appreciate it.
And you know what? We'll be back. We'll be back
September
2 Sundays
13th.
from now. September 13th. Any ending remarks from y'all?
Love and light, positivity, blessings. I wish that upon all y'all, and hopefully we can change the world, man. That's about it.
We will change the world.
Go follow Unlocks BC
Oh, yeah.
on Instagram. Subscribe
Facts.
to the channel. Like.
Smash that like button.
Yeah, go ahead, smash
Like
that
the video. Share the video. Hit your boy a subscribe.
That's all I had to say. Thank you guys for having
Thank
me,
you so
and
much.
I hope my rambling was as clear as it could possibly be. I tried.
All right, y'all.
All right.
Y'all be easy, man.